Some individuals gauge efficiency by the number of duties they cram into each hour. However, a constant whirlwind of activity can leave you exhausted, pursuing a sense of advancement that never fully materializes. You might pack your agenda to the brim, yet still wonder why significant achievements feel elusive. This is because many of those tasks are hurried actions rather than meaningful efforts. Speeding up on a treadmill doesn't help if it's facing the wrong way, and similarly, filling your day with busy work rarely leads to genuine breakthroughs. True productivity emerges when you direct your focus where it matters most, the few priorities that make a clear difference. By carefully trimming distractions and pausing to consider which efforts truly count, you create space for deeper engagement. This allows you to achieve more with fewer, more impactful steps, rather than counting hours worked or tasks completed. You begin to value what genuinely drives progress, discovering that doing slightly less can yield far greater results. People often view a packed schedule as a sign of importance, but constant activity can mask how little actually gets done. Rushing from one chore to another feels purposeful, yet it can be more motion than substance, increasing stress without building tangible success. When you chase every small demand, your day becomes a blur of shallow tasks, leaving no room for deeper, strategic moves that bring real breakthroughs. You might find yourself stuck in busy work, never pausing long enough to direct your energy where it truly counts. The myth of constant productivity often goes hand in hand with the belief that you must always say yes, filling every free hour with more responsibilities. This approach seems virtuous but often leads to a scattered mind and patchy results. Juggling numerous minor duties leaves little focus for major endeavors. By day's end, you might wonder why all that hustle produced so little. Sometimes doing less, if it's the right less, accomplishes far more than a constant flood of tasks. Fewer but more significant tasks can shift the entire equation. Instead of counting completed items, ask which actions have the most significant payoff. You might halve your to-do list, discarding or delegating trivial items, then invest your best hours in just one or two key moves, the ones that genuinely matter. This refocus might feel risky at first because you're stepping away from your usual volume of tasks. Yet, with each day that you devote ample time to core objectives rather than squeezing them between minor errands, you see meaningful progress. The power of depth reveals itself. Your output improves not by straining harder, but by targeting with precision. Choosing to focus your energy narrowly invites you to handle tasks with more clarity. If you're juggling a dozen things, you might do all of them on autopilot. Doing fewer, bigger tasks compels you to slow down, reflect, and refine. You spot potential pitfalls sooner, adapt strategies more effectively, and produce higher quality results. This is where the idea of doing less intersects with achieving more. By unburdening your schedule of superficial items, you free the mind to fully engage in what remains. Distracted, rushed efforts give way to a calmer, more intentional style, where you actually think through each step instead of just reacting. Still, the habit of constant busyness can feel hard to break. Some tie their worth to how perpetually occupied they appear, or they fear missing opportunities by refusing new requests. Careful approach is to ask yourself which requests align with your key goals and which ones drain your time without a clear return. You can consider the cost of always being available, the mental depletion, shallow concentration, and lost creativity. Gradually, you see that the path to genuine productivity sometimes requires a firm no, even to tasks that sound feasible. That strategic and thoughtful no keeps your finite bandwidth reserved for work that matters, avoiding that endless scramble. It means carving out spacious time blocks where no minor distractions break your flow. Perhaps a quiet hour each morning or a mid-afternoon stretch free of meetings. These windows might be short but are guarded fiercely. Within them, your undivided attention zeroes in on the single high-impact project you've chosen. Paradoxically, by working fewer total hours in this deeply focused mode, you can surpass the output of someone who half works for twice as long, interrupted by trivial chats, pings, and half-hearted multitasking. When you protect that zone, you discover how swiftly a focused mind can handle even complex work. Rest also becomes integral in exposing the productivity myth. A schedule with no margin for rest might look industrious, but leaves no space for reflection or recovery. Overwhelm sets in, and soon your performance slides even as your hours climb. Doing less includes acknowledging the role of breaks, brief detours that rejuvenate your thinking. A short walk might spark a solution that hours of continuous labor couldn't produce. An off-task moment might prompt an insight about your next move. When you budget deliberate downtime, you return to tasks fresher, accomplishing more in fewer clock hours. Setting boundaries around communication and minor obligations further highlights how scaling back fosters bigger wins. That might mean checking messages at 2 designated times rather than responding all day, so the rest of your day remains free for deep work. Or it might mean clearly stating that you won't be available for non-urgent requests in certain blocks. At first, people used to instant responses may be surprised, but they adapt. You notice how much mental clarity arises when you're not on call every minute. Real productivity flourishes because you're no longer derailed by a flood of small details. The mind stays steady, letting you immerse in tasks that genuinely warrant your attention. Prioritizing tasks based on impact rather than urgency erodes the myth of perpetual busyness. Sometimes the most urgent items are the least meaningful, and the truly significant items don't shout for attention. By filtering each day's obligations through the question, does this truly propel me forward? You shed non-essentials. You might handle only 2 big tasks, ignoring 6 smaller ones or postponing them indefinitely, and ironically find that your overall output feels far more substantial. This approach dares to disregard the typical push to handle everything at once, revealing that focusing on a small set of critical items yields better long-term gains. A big obstacle often lies in the fear of missing out. If you pare down your commitments, you might worry about missing opportunities. In reality, opportunities that match your core objectives are often more abundant than you think. By declining side roads, you retain the energy to grasp the main routes more effectively. The myth of you have to do it all or you'll lose out typically leaves you spread thin, chasing half a dozen tangents. Once you realize how seldom those tangents fully pay off, it becomes easier to pass them by. This is how doing less paves the way for sharper, more consistent progress. Sometimes the illusion of productivity manifests in elaborate to-do lists or color-coded plans that look impressive. But if those lists keep expanding faster than you resolve them, you're in a loop of planning without progressing. The simpler route might be a daily note naming one major task, just one. Then, no matter what else happens, you ensure that task gets your best energy. Over time, this single daily achievement compounds. Instead of scattering your mind across a sea of bullet points, you direct your intensity to a single target, finishing it decisively. Doing less in this manner is precisely how you yield greater impact. Tracking real outcomes, not busy metrics, keeps you honest about your level of effectiveness. For instance, if you're working on a business idea, you measure how it evolves or how many genuine leads emerge, not just how many hours you spend brainstorming. If you're improving a skill, you look at tangible improvements or progress markers rather than how many books you skimmed. This outcome-based check reveals if your busy hours are translating into actual value. By focusing on outcomes, you naturally let go of tasks done for the sake of looking busy, opting instead for actions that produce real shifts. That's where minimal effort can deliver sweeping results. The power of doing less extends to your mental space. If you chase endless data or keep 1,000 new ideas in your head, each one half-formed, you lose the clarity to develop any thoroughly. It's not about ignoring your curiosity. It's about structuring it so that you explore new ideas selectively. Perhaps you allocate a short window each week to investigate side topics, ensuring the rest of your time remains focused. This small discipline protects your mind from becoming a cluttered attic of half-baked plans, letting you delve deeply into a few chosen pursuits. Over the long run, that depth yields bigger breakthroughs than shallow, scattered rummaging. When a crisis or unexpected urgency arises, the difference between chasing busyness and practicing thoughtful minimalism becomes even clearer. The person who's always multitasking might crumble under sudden pressure because they have no buffer, no leftover bandwidth to handle the extra load. The person who does less but with more purpose usually has room to pivot. They built slack into their day, allowing them to address an emergency without their entire system collapsing. In that sense, doing less fosters a resilience that endless busyness undermines. Confronting colleagues or friends who equate visible hustle with success can be tricky. You might face questions about why you don't jump at every meeting or spend every evening in the office. Yet, once they see your bigger results and your consistent track record of finishing major goals, they often rethink their assumptions. Doing less isn't laziness. It's strategic allocation of time to the tasks that truly build momentum. Your calmer demeanor and clear accomplishments quietly challenge the myth that you have to hustle nonstop to succeed. A well-placed pause acts as a reset button for clarity. If you find yourself straying into too many tasks again, stepping back for a brief reflection can reveal what's essential and what's fluff. That reflection might mean reviewing your recent achievements, comparing them to your long-term objectives, and discarding projects that don't move the needle. You refocus on the small handful of efforts that truly shape your future, letting the rest fade to a lower priority. This cycle of periodically pruning your task list ensures it never balloons into a test of endurance rather than purposeful effort. Eventually, you see that doing less and achieving more is not just a short-term hack, but a mindset shift. You build a habit of asking, is this the best use of my time right now? And if the answer is no, you release that activity, channeling your resources into what genuinely matters. Over time, your to-do list might shrink drastically, yet your results continue to climb because each task is potent. People around you might wonder how you handle fewer tasks yet produce stronger outcomes. The truth is, you commit fully to the handful that count, refusing to be scattered by the rest. Guilt can emerge when you start cutting tasks because you fear letting people down. But focusing on your genuine priorities, done thoroughly, often serves others better in the long run. If you're always deluded by minor obligations, you can excel at the central tasks that define your role or personal mission. By clarifying your real responsibilities and politely declining the rest, you offer the world your best, not your leftovers. At first, it may feel uneasy, but the shift in results and your sense of fulfillment usually silences any early regrets. Stepping away from long hours can expose new pockets of creativity or reflection. Suddenly, your day has a bit of space for thinking beyond immediate tasks. That free mental air can lead to breakthroughs that no amount of brute force effort would uncover. A short moment gazing out the window or jotting thoughts in a notebook might unlock a solution you struggled with for weeks. Doing less fosters these moments of spontaneous insight, revealing that strategic downtime is an essential tool, not a waste. By gradually dismantling the belief that you must always be in motion, you grant yourself permission to focus intently and rest effectively. The synergy of those two states, deep engagement and genuine rest, far outstrips a middle ground of half work. Over time, your confidence in this approach grows because you experience how each carefully picked task comes to fruition faster and with higher quality. No longer do you measure success by how packed your planner looks. You measure it by how real your progress feels. Ultimately, this shift invites a simpler, more potent form of productivity. You note the few actions that change everything, invest your best energy in them, and let the rest take the back seat or fall away. Each day might appear less frantic, but the sense of purpose deepens. In that calm, you discover a quiet strength, the power of focusing on less so you can excel more, stepping off the treadmill of busyness to stride confidently toward results that truly matter. Cramming extra tasks into each spare minute can feed an image of importance, yet it often leads to scattered energy and minimal impact. The mind can only juggle so many details before it becomes cluttered, losing the capacity for deep thinking or creative leaps. People who appear busy all day may, by nightfall, feel they've handled countless items but advanced none of their true goals. Cutting down on tasks may seem risky if your sense of productivity depends on volume. Yet it's precisely that reduction that opens the door to quality. When you pare back commitments and guard your time, you grant yourself the freedom to dive deeply into fewer endeavors, uncovering the layers of skill or insight you'd miss if you were spread thin. Fewer items on your plate translate into more significant progress for each item, simply because you can afford to engage at a level that does justice to the task. Daily reflection helps reveal where the line between essential and optional lies. If you've navigated an entire day feeling busy yet can't point to a satisfying outcome, it's a sign you might have filled the hours with trivial undertakings. Perhaps you answered a handful of minor requests, ran small errands, and half-finished a couple of side tasks. This pattern repeats easily if you never pause to ask, what crucial outcome did I produce today? By the time you do pose that question, you realize how easily your efforts can scatter across unimportant ground. A brief self-check each evening or morning can call out these minor time drainers, prompting you to either address them swiftly or trim them altogether. That habit, done consistently, keeps your schedule honest about which tasks align with real priorities. Consolidating non-urgent demands can highlight the value of doing less instead of letting small chores or messages interrupt you all day. You bunch them into a single block, perhaps minutes in the afternoon, where you tidy up those loose ends. This practice neutralizes the stealthy interruptions that shred your focus. Freed from these constant mini-breaks, you notice how easily you immerse in a task when not bracing for another alert or request. Limiting your availability might feel uncomfortable if you're used to responding instantly to every beck and call, but the payoff becomes undeniable once you see how a continuous hour or two of deep engagement can yield more progress than a day spent toggling back and forth between tasks. Mental exhaustion arises faster when you attempt to handle an endless list. Each new item might be quick, but the collective weight accumulates. By midday, the mind feels overloaded, and the simplest challenge prompts you to stall or wander. Doing less helps you sidestep that downward spiral. You might notice, for instance, that once you limit yourself to 2 or 3 key accomplishments per day, your mental reserves stay higher throughout the afternoon. Instead of dragging yourself forward, you can sustain a steady pace because you're not leaping from one minor chore to another. You begin to sense that your best work surfaces when your mind isn't stretched across a dozen half-finished tasks. Working in sprints rather than marathons taps into this principle. A short, dedicated block, maybe minutes, focused on one important objective can surpass hours of partially distracted effort. The difference lies in your total immersion during those minutes. You're not scanning trivial errands or responding to fleeting demands. You're directing all your cognitive power into a single problem or project. This kind of structured minimalism shows how less can be more, fewer minutes overall, but each minute carries higher impact. Over time, you realize that an unbroken session of concentrated effort is priceless compared to a day scattered by trivial disruptions. Guarding your ascent is a potent tactic. If you say yes to every request, volunteering for every committee, every side gig, every mild favor, your calendar swells. You end up drained, delivering partial attention to each area. By practicing a measured no, you protect your finite hours, allocating them to tasks that align with your major goals. This doesn't mean turning down every favor or shrinking your life completely. It means thoughtfully choosing the few that truly fit. Whenever an offer arises, you gauge it against your current priorities. If it doesn't strongly match, you politely pass. At first, you might fear missing out or appearing unhelpful, but as your schedule lightens, you see how your best efforts thrive when not drowned by peripheral requests. Simplicity in planning can further reinforce doing less. A single page listing your top goals for the week might suffice rather than a sprawling plan that tries to capture every small action. A simple approach compels you to acknowledge which items truly matter rather than burying them in a sea of lesser tasks. When you wake, you glance at that short list, picking one objective to dominate your morning, maybe another for the afternoon. Freed from rummaging through a massive plan, your mind directs its energy swiftly and effectively. That sense of directness counters the usual habit of drifting from one unimportant detail to another. Delegation can reflect doing less while producing more. If you always keep minor tasks in your domain, like scheduling small errands or performing routine checks, you lose valuable chunks of time. By entrusting them to someone else or automating them if possible, you no longer spend your mental energy on tasks that yield minimal returns. You can then reinvest that freed capacity into higher level thinking. It's not about skirting responsibility, it's about focusing where your unique contribution lies. Summed over a week or month, the time recouped might surprise you, opening up space to truly excel at what only you can do. Resting strategically underscores how doing less can fuel greater results. If you perpetually skimp on breaks, your productivity may sag along with creativity and decision-making ability. A midday pause, even a short one, refreshes your mental state, letting you tackle afternoon tasks with renewed clarity. Some people feel guilty stepping away for a moment when their to-do list is long, but ironically, that short respite can enable you to finish tasks faster once you return. The mind works better when it isn't hammered continuously, so weaving short, deliberate rests into your day underscores the truth. The most effective workers don't necessarily log the longest hours, they schedule breaks that sharpen their concentration. Turning your back on the busyness myth often means confronting your own ego. There's a certain pride in claiming you're multitasking or that your plate is perpetually full. But if you dig deeper, you might find that half your tasks aren't advancing anything significant. Letting go can feel like losing part of your identity if you're used to being the busiest person around. But that's where growth lies. You discover that a calmer schedule fosters a higher caliber of work, and that your sense of worth doesn't rely on how frantic your timetable appears. Gradually, you learn to measure your day by the genuine achievements you've moved closer to, not by how frazzled you felt. Time blocking merges with the idea of minimal tasks. Instead of letting your day unfold at random, you allocate distinct blocks to your top goals, shutting out lesser items during that block. You don't switch tasks or chase tangential ideas. When the block ends, you either rest or rotate to a different essential task, leaving trivial chores for another designated period or ignoring them if they never rise to real importance. This discipline keeps each block potent. You accomplish more in that solitary hour than you might in half a day of scattered attempts. Beyond the day-to-day, a bigger perspective emerges if your schedule has fewer tasks overall. You have the capacity to reflect on direction, where your career or personal life is heading, instead of being lost in daily fuss. You can think about larger goals or plan how your current efforts set you up for the future. Doing less doesn't mean lacking ambition. It means channeling your ambition effectively so that each move aligns with a bigger vision. If you can't articulate the link between a task and a broader aim, that's a clue you might not need to do it at all. People who break the myth of endless productivity often surprise colleagues or friends by not appearing stressed while still producing remarkable outputs. From the outside, it can look like they have secret resources, but in reality, their secret is cutting the clutter. When you see them finishing major projects ahead of schedule or pivoting to new ideas with confidence, it's because they're not drowning in petty tasks. They've chosen fewer, more impactful actions, giving each the attention it needs. That approach, multiplied day after day, forms a track record of consistent wins. Mental bandwidth improves if your mind is loaded with small tasks to remember, steps to track, and obligations to shuffle. Your capacity for deep thought shrinks. Letting go of the unnecessary or deferring it to a tight schedule block means your brain can concentrate on the present challenge. This single-mindedness yields a creativity and problem-solving edge that's tough to replicate when you're monitoring details. Doing less, in this sense, is about liberating your mind from the tyranny of trivial items. Defining success differently is a key piece. If you see success as crossing off countless tasks by day's end, you'll keep piling them on. But if success means tangible strides toward a meaningful target, you'll start rejecting tasks that don't serve that target, no matter how easy or quick they might be. This refocusing can be uncomfortable because it forces you to confront which tasks are busy filler. Yet it's precisely that confrontation that breaks the myth of always doing more. Once you stop craving the cheap thrill of ticking boxes, you can find satisfaction in completing fewer but weightier goals. Occasional boredom can surface once you strip away extraneous tasks. Many rely on a jam-packed day to avoid introspection. With extra space, you might feel the urge to fill every gap. But if you embrace those moments, boredom can become fertile ground for fresh insights. Your mind wanders constructively, connecting dots you never saw. That creative spark is often the hallmark of genuinely productive people, those who achieve more in part because they let their mind roam when it needs to, rather than smothering every idle second with busyness. Over time, you find that the day has a natural balance. You spend energy on a carefully chosen set of tasks, then allow mental breathing room. The synergy of those two states, focused execution and relaxed recuperation, outperforms a schedule jammed from dawn to dusk. You wrap up each day feeling accomplished yet not depleted, able to wake the next morning ready for another round of strategic action. That rhythm fosters ongoing productivity in a sustainable manner, demolishing the myth that you have to be on the go constantly or risk being seen as lazy. In a sense, simplifying your workflow and tasks is about respecting your time. You treat each hour as a resource you invest, not a container to be jammed. This shift in perspective yields a calm confidence. You know you're applying yourself to the tasks that truly matter. The rest can either wait or never be done. That attitude might run against the tide of business culture, but the payoff is profound. You operate with clarity and purpose, and ironically, that quiet assurance often leads people to trust your leadership or competence more, not less. Eventually, the notion of less is more becomes second nature. You notice an idea pop up, like adding a new project or scheduling an extra meeting, and automatically question if it's crucial. If not, you let it pass without guilt. In doing so, your days remain stable, your main tasks flow, and your performance stands out. That's the real truth behind exposing the productivity myth. You thrive not by taking on everything, but by selectively honing in on a few pivotal actions, supporting them with mental clarity and periodic rest. The clutter falls away, replaced by deeper results in less total time. Saying no to more work can clash with the fear of appearing idle, yet focusing intently on fewer tasks often elevates the quality of your output so much that it eclipses any image concerns. When your schedule isn't jammed with trivial obligations, you can slow down enough to see nuances that others, swamped by busyness, might miss. A seemingly simple project can become a polished piece of work that stands out, whether it's a well-crafted proposal, a meticulously written article, or a thoughtful solution to a client's problem. The result isn't just about personal pride. It demonstrates to those around you that deeper engagement consistently beats scattered activity. Rather than juggling a string of half-done items, you showcase a single completed piece that shines. Reimagining deadlines is another subtle way to break the productivity myth. Many tasks come with flexible or inflated due dates, yet people treat every request as urgent working in a perpetual scramble. If you question these timelines, you might find that some can be pushed back or scaled differently, letting you group your workload more effectively. You might reduce or remove entire tasks when you realize they're based on outdated assumptions about speed being the supreme virtue. Doing less means you're not caught in an endless stream of better tomorrow, demands that never allow for real focus. Instead, you orchestrate your obligations around realistic intervals, ensuring that each one receives the consideration it deserves without bleeding into every spare hour. Borrowing quiet can be transformative. If you're surrounded by constant noise, open offices, busy corridors, social chatter, your mind remains in partial alert, scanning for new interruptions. Finding a corner of genuine silence or even using simple earplugs can free your mental bandwidth for tasks that demand deeper insight. In that stillness, your thoughts flow more cohesively, unbroken by trivial disruptions. You may tackle fewer things in that space, but each one progresses faster and more thoroughly. The link between fewer tasks, quieter surroundings, and bigger results becomes clear. The environment and the chosen workload reinforce each other, yielding a style of working that outperforms the usual barrage of quick, shallow tasks. Clearing digital clutter aligns with the principle of doing less. Whenever your gaze lands on something distracting, a bit of your focus shifts. This derails the momentum you've built by removing those distractions. By restoring calm to your workflow, you stop chasing fleeting stimuli, expanding your capacity to immerse in what truly matters. The single shift that digital minimalism demonstrates shows the power of less. Cutting out digital noise reveals how much mental energy was leaking away. Sometimes, the productivity myth persists because people equate success with a certain persona, the person who's always on, always engaged, never missing an opportunity. It can feel counterintuitive to step off that treadmill, choosing instead to do fewer but more targeted pursuits. Yet, real success stories often come from people who shut out the roar of perpetual demands. They learn to isolate a problem or goal and give it full attention while their peers scramble between tasks. Methodically refining each key objective until it stands above the rest, this approach becomes a hallmark of sustained success over time. Quality rest is often the missing link that segments the less is more philosophy. The mind, like the body, needs intervals to consolidate knowledge, recover from effort, and spark creativity. Racing through each day on minimal breaks leads to diminishing returns. By contrast, a short walk outside, a quiet cup of tea, or a mental breather can rejuvenate you to tackle the next key task with a fresh perspective. This idea that rest fuels productivity used to be dismissed in the face of hustle culture. But consistent evidence and personal experience show how a rested mind outperforms a fatigued one. You realize that by engaging in less total activity, you preserve more energy for the tasks that truly matter, finishing them in a shorter overall span. It's not merely about cutting tasks for comfort's sake. It's about the cumulative impact on performance and well-being when your schedule is lean. You can spend the necessary time refining a plan, testing your assumptions, or even polishing small details that set your work apart. If you keep darting between tasks, each item remains superficial, riddled with overlooked mistakes. A day full of partial progress rarely stacks up to a day with one major accomplishment brought to completion at a high standard. The difference is most stark when you compare end results. The jam-packed day might yield a swirl of half-baked attempts, whereas the minimalist approach yields a signature piece. Another angle is the confidence that builds when you see how much you can achieve without forcing yourself to be perpetually busy. You come to trust that a lighter schedule centered on pivotal tasks will guide you to real milestones. The anxiety of, I must do more or I'll fall behind, loosens its grip when you see yourself delivering well-considered outputs. That self-assurance can lead you to filter new requests more judiciously instead of reflexively adding them to your plate. You weigh them against your core goals. The more often you find the courage to say no to the lesser items, the more your yes becomes powerful, guaranteeing your best energies align with real priorities. Finding synergy between personal and professional life emerges from discarding the productivity myth. If you're frantically filling every work hour, there's little left for family, friends, or personal growth. Once you adopt a to know less, achieve more sane stance, you unearth hidden pockets of time to nurture relationships or hobbies. Ironically, those non-work pursuits can recharge your motivation and feed your creativity, looping back into higher quality performance when you return to your essential tasks. The cycle of relentless busyness, on the other hand, often breeds burnout, leaving no real winners in any domain. Simplicity remains the core theme. Each day ask, what's one main outcome I want by tonight? Then treat that outcome as your guiding star. If your day threatens to overflow with random tasks, you examine which ones can be delayed or skipped. You keep your eyes on that single big outcome, ensuring it's done well before diversions dilute your focus. This unwavering prioritization might take some resolve initially, but each success proves the approach works. You meet your target without drowning in an avalanche of lesser demands, showing that finishing fewer tasks with excellence can surpass a to-do list brimming with mediocrity. An interesting side effect is that you might discover hidden inefficiencies in your workflow. When you slow down and question each action, you notice repeated steps or unproductive rituals. By trimming your daily obligations, you see ways to streamline even further, maybe automating a repetitive process or merging two tasks that overlap. Doing less forces these inefficiencies to the surface, and once removed, you operate at a new level of smoothness. Each day runs cleaner, producing greater impact, minus the baggage. You confirm that cutting the clutter doesn't just reduce your workload, it refines how you work entirely. Letting go of tasks that carry minimal return can be an emotional process too. You might have attachments to certain routines or traditions, but if they no longer align with your major aims, keeping them drains resources. Releasing them opens room for growth. The relief you feel when you finally drop a redundant weekly meeting or a fruitless daily habit reinforces that not all tasks deserve your attention. With that space freed, you can tackle bigger challenges, the ones that genuinely move you forward. This is the essence of doing less to do more. Every chunk of time you recapture can be redirected towards something of lasting value. Recognizing that busyness can become a sort of addiction helps you break the cycle. Constant activity can distract from the discomfort of deeper thinking or confronting what truly needs to change. Slowing down to do less can expose truths, maybe a mismatch between your work and your passion, or a realization that certain goals no longer excite you. Though it might feel unsettling, that moment of clarity paves the way for genuine progress. Freed from the haze of busy tasks, you can reevaluate your direction, possibly adjusting your path to align with your evolving sense of purpose. Even small personal experiments can verify how doing less translates into bigger gains. Maybe you try a single day of letting go of half your usual commitments, focusing solely on a long postponed project. By the day's end, you might see more progress than in a week of fragmented stabs at it. That one experiment can spark a permanent shift in how you plan your calendar, revealing that your prior pace wasn't superior. It was just frenetic, delivering the illusion of movement without the substance of accomplishment. The payoff accumulates over weeks and months. You handle bigger tasks with a sense of calm. You notice your anxiety about fitting everything in has eased, and you begin finishing projects at a higher standard in less total time. Where once you felt pressured to appear perpetually busy, now you operate from a place of clarity, selecting a few tasks each day to address fully. The outcome is a balanced, effective form of productivity that stands in sharp contrast to the myth of constant busyness. You don't measure your worth by how overloaded you are, but by how well you fulfill the tasks that matter most. Eventually, it becomes clear that diminishing the chaos frees your mind, your schedule, and your potential. You concentrate on tasks that shape your future or elevate your craft, unburdened by the lesser items that used to fill every gap. Doing less in this sense is a strategy for greater success, because it underlines the difference between being busy and being genuinely productive. As you reap these rewards, you may never yearn to return to the old treadmill. Instead, you deepen your practice of discerning effort, proud to have shed the weight of hectic schedules, embracing a leaner but far more potent way of achieving all that truly matters. Some people cling to busyness as a shield against the idea that they aren't making enough progress. It's easier to say there's no time than to confront whether the tasks filling each day truly advance what's important. That avoidance can persist for years, blinding you to a simpler path, choosing fewer goals, investing in them consistently, and learning to let the rest slip away without guilt. When you realize your real limitations lie not in the clock but in how you allocate attention, it becomes clear that doing less is not about shrinking ambition. It's about aligning daily effort with deeper aspirations. That shift often requires a fresh look at long-term objectives. If your day is consumed by actions that fail to push you toward your grander vision, it doesn't matter how busy you are. The big dream remains distant. By reversing the usual approach, starting each week with your top priorities, then sprinkling in minor tasks only where there's room, you adopt a methodical stance. You guide your schedule around the few things that genuinely matter, instead of letting random requests devour the best hours of your day. This perspective creates a mental space where purposeful work can flourish, unchallenged by trivial tasks that once hijacked your time. engaging deeply with select tasks brings a powerful ripple effect. You notice patterns, refine processes, and build expertise faster because you're not juggling 5 or 6 different directions at once. A single effort, given undivided attention, often yields breakthroughs that scattered efforts rarely match. Maybe you refine a skill to a higher level or craft a product with an edge that sets it apart. Doing less in quantity amplifies your capacity for mastery. With each step, you sense your momentum accelerating, reinforced by the clarity of focusing on one track instead of multiple half-realized ideas. You watch one major concept take shape in full color. Surprisingly, trimming your workload can enhance relationships too. When you're perpetually busy, you might gloss over genuine engagement with friends, family, or colleagues. Short, distracted exchanges replace meaningful conversation, and the sense of connection wanes. By paring down tasks, you carve out time to talk with people attentively, to offer help without rushing, or to genuinely listen. You're not snatching moments with your mind half elsewhere, you're present. That presence fosters trust and warmth, qualities that frantic multitaskers often lose. Over days and weeks, you strengthen bonds that, in turn, support you in life and work. Doing less means giving yourself fully, whether to a task or a person, rather than scattering partial involvement everywhere. One practical tip is to label each potential task with a simple scale like high, medium, or low priority, and then commit to ignoring or postponing everything in the medium or low categories until you've satisfied the high ones. That act alone can trim half your to-do list by focusing on what's truly pivotal. You bypass the clutter of tasks that might feel urgent but yield little reward. The result is a calmer approach to daily efforts. You sidestep the habit of flipping from one minor crisis to another, instead channeling your focus into the few tasks that make a measurable difference. The deeper you go, the more you realize how many chores you accepted simply out of routine, not necessity. You might encounter pushback from those who equate busyness with diligence. They might question why you appear to have open space in your schedule, or why you're not rushing around like them. Yet, if you consistently deliver substantial outcomes, completing major milestones on time, innovating in your field, or maintaining a serene efficiency, skeptics often become curious. How is this possible? They ask, seeing you thrive in fewer hours with less stress. That curiosity can lead them to rethink their own relationship to busyness. Eventually, some might adopt elements of your approach, recognizing that the old hustle mindset isn't as productive as it claims to be. Doing less nurtures well-being. If you're perpetually overscheduled, anxiety becomes a steady undercurrent. You might feel pressured the moment you wake, mentally bracing for a wave of tasks. Cutting extraneous obligations relieves that tension, giving you the bandwidth to wake calmly, plan your day, and proceed with intention. You may find your nights more restful too, as you aren't carrying an overload of unfinished tasks into bedtime. The mental and physical benefits, less stress, better focus, more balanced energy, multiply when you live with a modest schedule tuned to genuine priorities. The principle extends to how you handle new opportunities. Instead of impulsively saying yes and figuring out logistics later, you weigh each invitation or request carefully. Will this actually advance my core goals or bring irreplaceable value? If not, you politely decline, preserving your resources for what does matter. Over time, you become known for excelling in the commitments you do accept, rather than juggling 1,000 minor ones. This reputation can lead to more interesting offers because people see the quality you bring when you choose to engage. Underpinning this philosophy is a trust in your own capacity to excel when not bogged down by minutiae. You rely on depth of effort rather than breadth of tasks. As you see your track record improving, your confidence grows, making it easier to maintain this stance against the tide of busyness. Where once you felt uneasy declining a small request, you now do so with conviction, knowing it protects your capacity for the big things. Even your decision-making process gets sharper. You practice sifting through demands swiftly, gauging them by alignment with your long-term aims. This sifting skill, honed by repeated use, becomes second nature. You can quickly spot an urgent but trivial matter versus a slower-moving but vital project. That clarity spares you from mental wrangling and hesitation. The result is a streamlined daily flow where you swiftly dispatch or postpone lesser tasks, reserving the main portion of your day for pivotal goals. Instead of dithering between tasks or feeling pulled in multiple directions, you operate with a steady calm. Limiting the time allocated to each significant task can further refine your results. If you know you have just a few hours for a major project before moving on, you commit wholeheartedly. There's little room to meander because you accept that once those hours pass, you'll focus elsewhere. This scenario encourages a self-imposed discipline, less time but more intentional use. The outcome surpasses a day-long slog where you nibble at the project while fielding random errands. Concentration remains high, fueling both speed and quality. The concept of less is more liberates you from comparing your schedule to others. You might see coworkers or peers brag about working late or juggling a dozen tasks. Instead of feeling inadequate, you quietly observe whether their frantic pace really yields better outcomes. Quite often, it doesn't. By trusting the strength of your well-chosen projects and your dedicated work style, you sidestep the stress of competition in business. That internal freedom opens space to refine your craft or deepen your skill set rather than chasing superficial markers of hard work. Mindful minimalism extends beyond work tasks into your overall life. You might notice you own piles of gadgets or clothes that eat up mental attention, or sign up for multiple clubs and events you barely enjoy. Cutting back on these obligations fosters the same sense of clarity. You release items or commitments that don't align with your core values. Freed from clutter and extraneous social demands, you bring the same purposeful approach to everything you do, feeling the difference in your relationships, your creative endeavors, and even how you spend your leisure time. In crisis moments, the advantages shine. If something urgent arises, an unexpected deadline, a personal emergency, you pivot more gracefully because your schedule isn't jammed to the edge. You have slack, a buffer that allows adaptation without meltdown. Meanwhile, those running at full throttle can crumble under sudden pressure. They're already at capacity with no room for surprises. Thus, doing less builds resilience. You respond quickly, solve the crisis, and return to your main objectives with minimal disruption, confirming that a less cluttered approach often outperforms the frantic alternative. Ultimately, the essence of rejecting nonstop busyness is acknowledging your own finite capacity and treating it with respect. It's about letting the unimportant fade, offering your best work to what's crucial, and finding that paradoxical sweet spot where you accomplish more of real significance by attempting fewer tasks overall. This approach doesn't advocate laziness or complacency. It advocates discernment through wise selection and focused action. You exceed the results of endless hustle, emerging with tangible achievements and a peace of mind impossible to replicate through perpetual motion. Some worry that by cutting back, they'll lose their competitive edge, as if relentless activity is the sole path to staying ahead. Yet, what truly cements a competitive edge is not the volume of tasks, but the quality and timing of the few that matter. Rather than tallying how many plates you spin, you keep your eye on the plates that serve your core purpose. This mindset shines especially when the stakes rise amid a flood of demands. You calmly sort the genuine from the superficial, devoting meaningful attention to the real catalyst behind progress. You find over time that you can outperform those who appear always on the move simply because you're focusing your energy more deliberately, making a conscious effort to unify your day around a small set of priorities, frees you from the stress of guesswork. You wake with a short list of true objectives, and each action you take supports those objectives. Your momentum grows as you see consistency turn into completion. A sense of calm power replaces the frenzy of a congested schedule. Colleagues might see you as less rushed yet more dependable. That balance between unhurried demeanor and robust output often draws respect, even if at first they're puzzled by how you can seem so underoccupied yet deliver so strongly. Turning tasks into stepping stones rather than grinding chores transforms your outlook. When every commitment on your list is chosen with intention, you're more apt to see its wider implications. A single project might serve multiple goals, improving skills, strengthening relationships, or opening new opportunities, where a typical random task might only check one small box. This layered benefit emerges naturally from thoughtful selection. As you invest yourself in fewer efforts, each can serve multiple facets of your life. Not only is the workload lighter, it's more valuable, diminishing the illusion that you must do everything to get ahead. Finding the right rhythm for your unique style ensures that cutting back doesn't morph into procrastination or passivity. Some thrive on short bursts of intense work followed by downtime, others on longer, steady engagements. Within your chosen tasks, you calibrate how to work. Maybe a quick sprint suits a tight problem, while a lengthy flow session suits a creative pursuit. By keeping the number of tasks small, you can customize each approach, giving the best possible treatment to the task at hand. Freed from attempting to apply the same rushed method to everything, you deliver deeper, more nuanced results. Another aspect is preparing for long-term gains rather than short-term checkmarks. Instead of scattering your day with quick wins, you aim for achievements that might take a bit more time but carry enduring impact. This approach may look less flashy in daily tallies. You won't brag about crossing off items in 8 hours, but the outcome is more substantial. Perhaps you build a skill or craft a plan that sets you up for months of progress. When the dust settles, those who favored frantic item chasing have a flurry of trivial completions, while you hold a well-constructed asset that continues paying dividends. Over the years, the contrast in growth becomes stark. It's essential to note that doing less doesn't mean ignoring small tasks entirely. The difference is that you handle them in streamlined blocks or only after you've satisfied your main objectives. By scheduling them in a tight window, maybe late afternoon or a chunk of time once or twice a week, you ensure they don't interfere with your critical work. This compartmentalizing method grants them just enough attention to be done correctly without letting them dominate your best hours. Surprisingly, small tasks often require less time when you batch them, so the overall load diminishes. Free from the drip of micro-interruptions, you keep the high-value portion of your day intact. Practicing minimalism in communication seals the deal for many. If you're bombarded by messages, calls, or in-person drop-ins, your flow shatters. By limiting how often and how widely you communicate, you limit how often you're pulled off track. Rather than constant availability, you might check messages at set intervals, ensuring you won't miss anything crucial, but won't be forever distracted by trivial ping-pong conversations. The time regained from stopping frequent interruptions can be astounding. Regular deep dives into tasks, even just an hour each day, begin to eclipse the results of perpetual partial focus. Delegating or collaborating strategically can further the less is more ethos. If a coworker or team member has strengths aligned with a certain task, letting them handle it can free you to concentrate on your own prime areas. You trade off minor tasks that aren't your forte for bigger gains in your zone of expertise. Over time, this synergy elevates everyone's performance because you each invest more of your day in what you do best. The entire environment grows more efficient, often refuting the myth that everyone must scramble to handle every item that appears. Guarding downtime for actual rest remains a pillar in sustaining this approach. When you see a gap in your calendar, you don't rush to fill it with an extra task unless that task truly matters. Instead, you might read, "Simply pause." Initially, this can feel unsettling if you're used to constant action, but you quickly realize that real rest regenerates your capacity for higher-level thinking and sharper decisions. By contrast, continuous hustle dulls your edge, turning your day into one long race that yields exhaustion rather than excellence. Some worry they'll lose momentum if they stop that constant hustle. But true momentum comes not from overstuffing your schedule, but from seeing consistent traction on a narrow set of essential goals. That traction builds excitement because progress is unmistakable, and that excitement fuels further commitment. Each day becomes a building block, not a random scattering. When you cross a milestone, you feel genuine satisfaction untainted by the sense that you're falling behind on a dozen other tasks. Paradoxically, the simpler focus promotes faster, more sustained momentum than any frantic approach. After living this way for a stretch, you might look back at your old methods and wonder how you ever believed that busyness guaranteed success. The difference in your well-being alone can be striking. You're less tense, less prone to meltdown, and more motivated by the clear wins you keep racking up. The people around you may still be caught in the hustle, and you might occasionally be tempted to rejoin it. But recalling the contrast, how you once felt fatigued daily with minimal real breakthroughs, keeps you anchored in a gentler, more potent rhythm. Challenging the productivity myth brings a sense of self-trust. You see that you can indeed distinguish key priorities from clutter, that you have the discipline to say no when needed, that your mind blossoms when it isn't overtaxed. A quiet confidence emerges. You know you can produce at a high level without burying yourself in a million small tasks. That confidence becomes a buffer against external demands, enabling you to hold your ground the next time someone tries to load yet another obligation on your plate. At the heart of it all, the message is simple. Replacing nonstop busyness with deliberate focus is neither lazy nor reckless. It's the method for truly maximizing your impact by shedding peripheral tasks. You invest deeply in what counts, making each effort resonate more powerfully. This isn't a short-term trick. It's a perspective shift that, once adopted, tends to stick because the benefits are so vivid. Clarity, improved results, less strain, and more meaningful contributions in both your professional and personal life. When you step away from the myth of nonstop busyness, a remarkable clarity emerges. The realization that a handful of carefully selected tasks can surpass an endless parade of trivial chores. You uncover new reserves of creativity, channeling energy into fewer projects but delivering them with true depth. People may still flock to the idea of cramming every moment, yet your example silently demonstrates that genuine productivity, measured by real achievements rather than frantic motion, favors deliberate action over perpetual rushing. The calm sense of control you gain not only reduces daily stress but strengthens your impact on those goals that matter most to you. You find a simpler approach to planning, guided by outcome and value rather than sheer quantity. Over time, this reduced load multiplies the significance of each task, creating a rhythm of completion and rest that keeps you motivated. You're free from the chaos of juggling countless obligations, standing firm in the knowledge that doing less, executed smartly, truly can accomplish more.